My name's Jeff Montgomery. I'm a partner at the Ampersand Agency, and really happy that you've all joined for Rethinking Social Media. It's a hot topic, as we were just discussing about how this all works. Things change much more rapidly in the world of social media than probably any other media. Um, I wanted to mention briefly that Ampersand is a branding agency in Austin, Texas. We've been around for about 20 years. And we're a full service branding agency that has strategy, creative, and media. And Exclamation Media is our in-house media department that we rebranded about 3 years ago in order to pick up some of the digital and social media work that doesn't conflict with our other clients, but didn't always necessarily want to have creative as part of the execution, although we do both. So with that, we're real excited about this first webinar of the year for us in Rethinking Social Media. Brian Thompson, the creative director at Ampersand, will be joined with Emily Branson, one of our top media managers at Exclamation. And I'm going to hand it off to Emily and let them take the ball and run with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We are super excited to talk more about this crazy, mysterious, always changing world of social media. Real quick, this is our agenda slide. So some things we're going to be talking through today. But I just wanted to let y'all know, as we're working through this webinar, please feel free to jump in and ask any questions. There's a Q&A function you should see on your screen. It's a little button that says Q&A. Feel free, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, to submit any question you might have, and we can answer it either in real time or at the end. So with that, we can get started and kick things off, and I am going to pass it to Brian.
Excellent, Emily, thanks so much. So I can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but I hope I can talk and press the button to advance the slides at the same time. So thank you all for joining us. Just to set the stage, I don't think I'm going to blow any minds here, but social media has changed. It continues to constantly change, but it is important to set the stage. So we'll walk through some of the new platforms and features at a high level. And oh, by the way, there's still a global pandemic. So what does that mean for us today? Hand it off to Emily there.
Thank you, Brian. So we all think of this social media world as everything just happened in the last 30 seconds. This is all new, when in reality, it's not. Snapchat launched back in 2011. TikTok actually launched in 2016. So while they do feel new, they've actually been around for a while. And what is new is that they've been developing these really intricate, really complex suites of ad units that allow us to use their platforms to the best of our abilities as a brand.
Yep. And they're also rolling out new features constantly. Instagram Reels feel a lot like TikTok videos. Twitter just launched fleets that disappear in 24 hours, like snaps on Snapchat. And if this slide feels chaotic, it's supposed to, because this is what social media feels like today. A lot of platforms feel like they're trying to one-up each other or match each other, and really just trying to capture those eyeballs in new and interesting ways. So as always, social media continues to be complicated. We still hear jokes about, oh, just put the intern in charge, but it's a lot more complicated than that. You really need to give it the attention it deserves. This is, a funny tweet about all the things that social managers and your social team has to deal with, but Pinterest isn't even on this list. And tomorrow something else is going to get added to it.
Exactly, Brian. And these things are changing all the time, which is why this is something we always keep our eye on.
And the other important thing to keep in mind, again, not breaking any news here, but the algorithm controls everything you see. It's not the Matrix, but it is big business. Again, this has been happening for a long time. Facebook first started using an algorithm to sort by relevancy instead of just doing things in chronological order way back in 2009. And companies have only gotten better and smarter at analyzing all that data. And it's the purpose of maximizing the amount of time people spend on these platforms. Because to state the obvious again, more screen time equals more ad seen, which means they're making more money. So what does that mean for us as advertisers and in the media world? And I think Emily's probably smarter to answer that than I am.
I don't know about that, but hopefully. So, like Brian said, the algorithm kind of rules everything these days. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the changes in Facebook's algorithm actually led to organic content being seen a lot less. So, since about 2015, if you're just posting organic content without putting any money behind it, that content is only being seen by about 5 to 15% of your followers. So that means that 85 to 95% of your followers don't see any of your organic social content if you're not paying for it to be seen. So a lot of companies put a lot of money and time and work into really beautiful organic social content. But the key here is you're going to have to put money behind it for it to be seen. Otherwise, it just gets lost in the social abyss.
Especially today during COVID-19, we know people are spending a lot more time on social platforms, but if you're not putting money behind it, they're not seeing it. So social has always been one of a brand's core communication tools. This was true before COVID-19. It's even more important now to help drive recovery for brands. And why is that?
So something that we've learned since COVID-19 really hit is that brands succeed when they really speak to and engage with their core customers and focusing on those core customers to get them to be brand loyalists and returning time and time again. So how do you talk to this core group of your audience that has become even more important than ever before? Well, that's social. Your followers are your core customers. We found that about 85% of a brand's followers and fans are actually their core customers. So you want to make sure that they're seeing that organic content and engaging with your brand, especially during COVID. That's shown to be really, really critical. So just to kind of round out this intro for y'all, how the way we view social is that boosting organic content allows you to really engage your base and they actually see your content. And then paid social ads helps build sales and an audience on top of that core base.
As I like to say, it takes two to tango. So I think that's the perfect segue to the real meat of this webinar with the media perspective.
All right, well, let's get into it. So from a media perspective, the biggest thing that we really approach social with is this mindset that social media is a web. We used to kind of think of social media in different silos or maybe as like a checklist. Yes, we're on Facebook. Yes, we're on Instagram. Yes, we're on Twitter, but they're totally separate. What we learned is they're actually all connected and they're all linked. So we like to think of it as this web because your target audience is really complex. They're not just one type of person. So we like to think about using these different platforms in ways to reach your different audience segments. So if you're trying to reach women between the ages of 25 and 65, you might use one platform to reach women 25 to 40 and another platform to reach women 40 plus. It's really about strategically using each platform to reach all of the complex segments of your target audience. So like I said, different people use different platforms differently. How many times can I say different in this webinar? So as you can see here, people spend different amounts of time. There are different primary age groups and even different genders per platform. So as you can see, if you're trying to reach women between the ages of 30 and 49, Pinterest is probably a safe bet. Whereas if you're targeting more of a male audience, you're probably going to want to focus on YouTube. However, there is a likelihood that both are part of your target audience. So it's really about using multiple platforms to speak to all of your different audience segments. And it actually looks like we have a question, Brian. How do you decide which platform to experiment with next? That is a great question. It can be very overwhelming, like what Brian walked us through in the beginning. There's so many platforms with so many different ad units that it can definitely feel like a lot. But I think that this is a great question for this slide because it totally depends on where your target audience is. So you want to be testing on the platforms where you think you can reach that core audience. So if you're traditionally only on Facebook and Instagram, you might want to test Pinterest if you're focusing on women, or Snapchat if you're focusing on a younger audience.
Yeah, I think it's true. You have to look at what your customers are doing. And if that requires actually talking to them in real life, even better. We have a slide later on where we talk about shiny object syndrome, where there's this compulsion to chase the latest thing. If I listen to my daughter, every client of ours would just be making TikTok dance videos. So testing is really the key. Look for people that follow you and that engage with you, and do a little online snooping and see what else they're doing, and then use that as kind of a best case scenario to test out and learn. You really just have to experiment and kind of dig into their world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
All right. So we alluded to it in the beginning of this webinar, but boosting has become a really critical part of that social web. It allows you to communicate with your core customers and really engage them, especially during these COVID times. So what people don't really know is that boosting has come a long way over the past few years. It had what used to be very limited capabilities. It has now grown to offer in-depth targeting, placement, and audience capabilities. And it just really allows you to reach this core customer in a way that makes it a little more unique, feel very personal, and feel very engaging. So let's look at why it's so important to have this in your media mix. So this is one of our favorite graphics ever because it is the easiest way to explain why putting money behind your organic content is so crucial. We have the visual on the right, which is the percentage of your followers who see your organic content if you just put it out into the universe. And then we have the visual on the left, which is how many people see your social content if you put money behind it and boost. And like I said, we can use these really sophisticated audience tactics. So you're not just boosting to people who might be followers of your page, but you can also show your content to people who have similar interests. Additionally, a really important note is that we don't really just boost content willy-nilly. Our process isn't just snapping a picture at an event, posting it in real time, and putting money behind it. Although there's nothing wrong with that, I do want to say. Brian's going to dive into this a little bit in his section as well. But we do believe that posts worth putting money behind and targeting to our key audiences should always ladder up to the brand platform and messaging pillars. And when we follow these sort of structures, we see really great results. So the numbers on this slide are real. We did not make these up. They are 100% real. The top row is from paid social ads, and then the bottom row is from boosting organic content. Similar amounts of money, you can see very similar impression counts. However, the engagement for boosting is almost double what it was for the paid Facebook ads. So the big takeaway here is boosting also allows your content to feel more organic, so people are a lot more apt to engage with it. So, brands and companies are always wondering, how can we get more engagement? How can we get more engagement? This is such a clear and easy tool to use to garner more engagement and build your social base. So it can be a little overwhelming as you're approaching this. Most platforms provide additional tools that help you align your business and media goals. So when we're looking at social campaigns, the very first step is, what is your objective? And while this may seem clear and easy and, yeah, we want more brand awareness. However, what most people don't know is that sometimes these marketing objectives don't lead to the results that you're actually hoping for. So campaigns such as brand awareness and reach actually limit the amount of people who are engaging with your content, whereas something like traffic or engagement will garner a lot more clicks and engagement. So this is a great segue into why we really stress the importance of testing. We are all about testing at exclamation and ampersand. It really helps you understand a platform's algorithm and how it works so you can best use it. So different platforms have different algorithms. Snapchat works different from Facebook, which is different from Instagram, which is different from Pinterest. So we test on each of these platforms to really get to know the algorithm and use that to our advantage to improve performance. Oh, Brian, we just got another question. Someone said, if I don't have enough money in my budget to do both boosting and paid ads, which is more important? Connecting with my core followers and customers or pursuing new customers?
Well, there's never enough money in any budget. So
Yeah.
I think it really depends on your business objectives and then the state of the state of the world. I would say right now during COVID, double down on the people that already know and love you. As we come out of this world, that may change. It also depends on what you're doing from a business perspective. If you're trying to launch a new product, for example, or a line extension or a new location, then you're probably going to need to put some real money behind that to get the word out to new audiences.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I will add too, it's a lot cheaper to connect with your core customers than it is to pursue new customers. So in a time like this, when it is so crucial to connect with your core followers, I think it's an easy route, especially if you're trying to maintain a tight budget.
Cool, smart.
All right. So like I said in the beginning, a lot of people have thought of social in these silos, or, when you think of social media, you think of Facebook and Instagram. But we really feel that it's time to get out of your comfort zone, test new platforms, see if you can engage your audience in a new and effective way. And you'll really see the benefits of that. So here at exclamation and ampersand, we typically test with about 10% of a media budget and take it from there. So we like to start small, see what the data tells us, and then let that guide any budget adjustments in the future. That being said, we're not going to test on Snapchat and say, okay, this is performing better than any other platform. 100% of our budget is going to Snapchat. Like I was saying with the social web, there are different audience segments on different platforms that you still need to cater to and communicate with. So it's about making these smart adjustments that allow you to most effectively reach all of your audience.
And Emily, I might jump in and add, this is Jeff Montgomery. Because I have a research background and because we see such rapid change on platforms, Facebook, for example, we do some kind of small test about every 3 or 4 months because they change the algorithms. And those algorithms with the campaign objectives that Emily showed you in a few slides before, when those change, they can affect how effective your spend on that platform can be. So it's important to incorporate some tests. And there's quite frequently a lot of resistance with clients, but once they see how and why the testing is so important, they support it because the overall results always tend to be much, much better when you understand how the algorithms actually work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. We also got a question. How did you come up with the 10% budget for, as a rule of thumb, does this amount matter? Yeah, I think the amount does matter. Like I was saying, we like to start small. We don't want to adjust a lot of a budget. So 10% is enough to see some trends and see some change without putting a ton of money into a new test. right. And lastly, test and optimize are buzzwords for a reason. If we have not driven it home enough in the past 5 to 10 minutes, how crucial it is to test on social media, it really is so important. If you're not testing and optimizing, then campaign performance is likely underperforming by at least 30%. And we've found in our own deep dives that in most cases, that underperformance is even higher. So, in addition to looking at crucial metrics like click through rate and engagement rate and view rates, we also keep in mind cost because we want to make sure we're spending our clients' money wisely. We know that budgets are tight, and we want to make sure that we are spending efficiently and effectively. So when we're putting a campaign together, we really look at CPM, which is cost per thousand to help put a budget together. And then once the campaign is live and running, we can measure cost by cost per click or cost per engagement. So we can see if the money that we're putting into that platform is really reaping the benefits that it should. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Brian for the fun stuff to walk through the creative perspective.
I think the division of labor here is you get the smart stuff, I get the fun stuff.
The moral of the story is they work well together.
What Emily just said is really true, that a lot of brands are wasting a lot of money, and they're also wasting a lot of time. I don't want to make fun of everybody, but luckily the parody site Adweek makes fun of brands for me. So as Emily spelled out, if no one's seeing your organic content unless you're paying to boost it, why waste so much time and money posting irrelevant crap all day just to fill your feed? It's like your mother always said, if you don't have something nice to say. Well, if you don't have something really good to post, why post at all? Everything that you're putting out on your social channel should ladder up to your brand purpose, your overall marketing strategy, and your messaging framework. What are the stories you want to tell people? How do you want them to think and feel about you? And that really takes us to the first thing that I want everyone to rethink about social, which is stop feeding the beast. There's a lot of rules made up by gurus back in the 90s about the optimal times of day and number of posts that you needed to make, like, oh, at 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock, you see 5% more results. And who knows if that's true anymore, but if you're putting money behind it, it needs to be. At the end of the day, social media is still a beast. It's always going to be hungry for more content, but now you can stop feeding it so much junk food. So think quality over quantity, and give your team the time and resources they need to create work that actually resonates with your audiences. So kill all of those so-called best practices.
But I will say, not all of them. There are new best practices. We definitely don't want to go dark and just spend a month coming up with content. We still want to show our customers and those engaged that we're paying attention to them and the lights are still on.
All right, fair enough. I like to say that best practices are what worked yesterday. So see if they work again tomorrow, but don't just default to the same old rules.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So case in point, no one cares what your brand has to say about National Pancake Day, unless of course you're IHOP. That's very relevant to their purpose. But if it's not, don't do it. I am stupefied by the fact that hashtag holidays are a thing still. So just don't do that. But what should you do instead? Well, you can create your own moments. A client of ours, Laredo Taco Company, their truth is respect the taco. Authenticity is a buzzword, but they really live it every day with fresh ingredients and how they prepare their food. So when the shelter-in-place orders went into effect at the start of COVID-19, they had to shut down a lot of things, just like a lot of other restaurants, and they really recognized in their local communities that a lot of even smaller businesses were hurting. So we launched a campaign to turn Taco Tuesday into Takeout Taco Tuesday, encouraging people not just to come to our restaurants, but to support their local favorites as well. So go to your local taqueria, stop by the taco truck, and really support all the people that love and make great tacos. So what we're able to do with that, instead of just having a random one-off post on one day or every Tuesday, like a lot of brands and particularly taco restaurants were doing, we turned that moment into a whole movement. throughout the course of this past year, by doing all kinds of different ways to bring Takeout Taco Tuesday to the forefront every week. So we did things where you're like, share a positive message with your friend or buy somebody a taco. We did a series of different challenges like, posting a picture from your favorite taco truck. And then we did a series of contests for a chance to win free tacos for the entire year. So we really just turned this into something that was fun and engaging, and something that was completely ownable for Laredo Taco Company, even though a lot of other restaurants jumped on board and started using the same hashtag and using it themselves. It really achieved that goal of not just getting our name out there in a way that felt authentic and real, true to their purpose, but it really did help local communities and bring people to the forefront, which just generates more goodwill for the client and really makes that idea that Emily talked about doubling down on your core customers in social, really love this brand even more. So it's a nice example. And then we mentioned earlier the shiny object syndrome. I like to say fish where the fish are. So if you know where your customer is engaged, that's where you should be spending your time and money. But then to torture the metaphor, you can always try different watering holes and new types of bait. It's just a funny way of saying what Emily already said, experiment. And then the question that I hear a lot, do you need to have unique content for every platform? And this was really the rule of thumb for a lot of years. If you post the same thing everywhere, you're going to turn people off, or it's going to feel inauthentic. And I don't know that that's true today anymore so much. Again, because of people using different platforms in different ways, and if people aren't seeing your organic content, does it really matter? So yes, you can use the same creative assets and the same messaging across all your platforms, but you can also do better than that. So walk you through a couple of examples real quick. For a university client of ours, as a public institution, funds can be tight. So if they're reaching different students, no reason not to talk to them on the same platform or different platforms in different ways. So we're going to get the most bang out of the bucks that we can for every asset that we've got. But we do want to tailor messaging when we're talking to different people. Also a note, I can't stress this enough, that every so often just check all your platforms about specs changing, because character counts, recommended image sizes, that stuff does change over time. So if you just have default templates set up for stuff, every so often just make sure that it's still looking good on the actual platforms. And then of course a step better that is really planning ahead for how you gather and use your assets. So our grocery store client, what really sets them apart are their people. And it's really true. They take a lot of pride in serving their neighbors here in Texas and Louisiana. So for this client, we've worked with them over the year to build up a whole library of assets of their people and all the good food they have in their different departments. And we use those across multiple platforms in a lot of different ways. And when we're doing a photo shoot, we work with their folks to be very particular about it's more than just getting things in a horizontal and a vertical format. So it works in different platforms for resizing, but thinking about the kind of assets we want to capture so that we have the ability to tell the broadest range of stories as possible, so that we can talk to people in a way that they want to hear in different platforms. Easy example is a lot of times we'll promote recipes on Pinterest because we know that's what people are looking for on that platform. But the gold standard is still really creating custom content for a particular audience on a particular channel. So another fun example for Laredo Taco Company, this was a series of taco truths that we created that played off of some of those social moments of, we did one for Valentine's Day, it's okay to fall apart, tacos do too. And then other fun ones that just hit on the different brand pillars like fresh tortillas and breakfast tacos and all those things that we want to be able to talk about in fun ways. And we, using some fun animation, really brought them to life on Instagram in a fun way.
Hey, Brian, we actually just got a fun question for you. Someone asked, what does your creative brainstorming process for social look like?
It's a little different based on what the need is day to day. And it's changing over time. I'll go into this a little deeper in a bit, but when real time really came to the forefront, it was this war room mentality and always on and very reactionary. And now the trend that I'm really seeing is thinking of your creative in social the same way you think about your creative everywhere else, where you're going back to that brand truth and your strategy and what are the stories you want to tell. I hate the phrase content buckets, but it's apt. What are the different pillars that you want to hit on, and what are the kind of stories that you want to tell? And then it's the same brainstorming process as everything else you do. You just throw stuff up at the wall, see what resonates, and then you spend some time experimenting and developing it, and then you turn it into ads or posts, and you run them and see how people react. Did that make any sense? Felt like I was rambling a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Excellent. All right, so I'll move on. So one of my big pet peeves, and I promised Jeff that I wouldn't just make this a list of my pet peeves, but this is a big one. Going viral. Everybody wants to do it, but it's magical, but you can't guarantee that you're ever going to catch that unicorn, especially in today's pay-to-play world. So going viral is a bonus, not a goal. So really want you to focus on thinking about, let's get a lot of base hits, not just trying to hit home runs or first downs, not touchdowns. I'm really not a sports guy, so what do those metaphors actually mean? It's really thinking about that day in and day out of how do you tell your brand truth in new and interesting ways. And there's several categories in social media that you have in your toolbox to do that. So mentioned real time, that's responding to cultural events as they happen. Rule of thumb, if you're posting about something 24 hours later, you're probably already too late. Owned occasion. A lot of people just default to new product launches or sales or limited time promotions, and those are all great too, and you want to get those messages out there. But that Laredo Taco Company example I shared, where we created a moment based around the idea of making Taco Tuesday into a way to support takeout, is a great example of creating a moment or a campaign that none of your competitors could actually do. Always on, evergreen. That's not just the always on of that real-time war room mentality, but just evergreen promotions that you have under your ongoing brand campaigns. That's that kind of day in, day out stuff that you want to constantly optimize and get the right messages out there. And then seasonal, these are things that happen year after year or month to month based on recurring promotions or events. So that could be a conference or a different sale every year, or something that your customers are really into. Just depends on your world. And then there's a lot of tactics that fall under each of these things or overlap. One that I love a lot is using influencers in smart ways, and those folks can really help you almost in any one of these categories. But it's about using them and finding the right influencers to work with your brand and that resonate with your audience. And then customer service I've broken out separately here because it really is a different animal. You want to have, the old phrase was join the conversation, and that's really the one place where I think it's really still true. If somebody has a question, you want to respond to them promptly. The keynote there really is just having your brand messaging and your brand tone of voice, and really giving those people the freedom to answer like humans, and not just canned responses that you repeat ad infinitum everywhere. So across these categories and organic and paid, a lot of brands and teams still kind of silo these categories or types of content across different teams. But the big thing to keep in mind is that your audience doesn't distinguish. They don't know the difference. If they see something from your brand, it's all your brand. It's all coming from you. So think about all these categories and all these platforms cohesively. Everything should tie into your overarching brand purpose. You want to be telling the same messages, the same kind of stories, but doing it in interesting and different ways on different platforms. So that is a lot of content. How do you create all of it? Well, the same way you create all your other advertising. And I don't mean to be glib, but social really is your brand's primary communication medium today. So my point is just give it the love it deserves. The joke we made up front about, it's not just something you give to the intern. Interns are great and they come up with a lot of fun, helpful stuff, but you really have to have a team working together across silos to really build bridges and think cohesively about everything you're doing with your marketing dollars and media spend. All right, so the creative process, this is harkening back to the question a little bit about how do you brainstorm. And like I said, not to be glib, but it's the same for any kind of brainstorm. You start with your creative brief that gives you all the insights you need. You just come up with ideas and see what resonates and what feels on strategy. You execute those ideas and you produce them out into the world, and then you evaluate. Like Emily says, test and repeat are buzzwords for a reason, and rinse and repeat, then you do it all over again. So what are the tools that every social team actually needs to succeed. So I'll dive into a little bit more detail here. The creative brief that I mentioned, just like any other creative brief for your marketing or branding, you want to list the objective. What are you trying to achieve? Who are you trying to talk to? What key insights resonate with them? What's the one thing you want them to take away? And then, of course, the deliverables. What are we actually making? And then what are the specs for those deliverables? How big does it have to be? How long does it run? That kind of thing. And then timeline. When do you need it by? It's important to know what your deadlines are. And then brand guidelines. I mentioned this when talking about customer service online and social, but it's really true for everything. Everything you create should really ladder up to the rest of your brand. Not just the visual style, but also the tone of voice. You want to feel like it's coming from you, you're a brand and no one else. And then messaging platform, that's the standardized language that uses your brand voice to describe what you do and why your customer should choose you. Again, just like all your other advertising, you don't want to use the exact same phrase every time, but you should have some go-to language that just helps you tell your stories in clear, concise ways. And then content categories, these are the buckets I referenced earlier. What are the things you post about that align to your brand messaging pillars? And then your content calendar, what are you posting and when are you posting it? And a lot of this stuff is really automated now. Sprout and Hootsuite are kind of the standard defaults that do a great job helping you schedule things and for analytics. If you've got a bigger budget, Khoros really does a great job with a robust customer and content management platform. The tool doesn't matter as long as you're staying organized and looking at the insights and analytics that you get out the back end. And then, of course,
hey, Brian,
yeah.
Before you move on, the content categories, though, I think are real important. And they wouldn't necessarily be like 10 or 15 different categories. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it depends on how complicated your brand is and how many products you have. But if you're talking about, I always use the metaphor like if I throw you a baseball, you're going to catch the baseball, right? Well, maybe I wouldn't, but most people would. If I throw two balls at you, maybe you're going to catch both of them. Probably not. I start throwing 4, 5, 6 balls at you. The chances of you catching anything really goes down. So it's the same with your advertising in your post. If you're trying to talk about everything under the sun, it's just scattershot and I don't know what you're trying to tell me. If you have a couple key messages that you really hone in on and repeat in fresh and interesting ways, that really starts getting driven home. I hear you, Jeff, say the word frequency a lot and reach. And me growing up, well, back in the 70s and 80s, I heard the same jingle on TV ad infinitum, and I can still sing them. So there's something to be said for repeating messages but doing it in interesting ways. So there's no set rule of thumb on how many content categories you should have. But I would say the rule of thumb is if it's too many, if you can't keep track of them, your customers certainly can't either. So cool. And then my last bullet point, more time. Of course, social it continues to be a moving beast, so things have to happen quickly, but really on the front end with strategy and brainstorming, giving your team the time and resources they need to really go deep just makes your work stronger across the board. All right, so that's enough of me talking. So really want to move into what should you do. So these are our key recommendations given the media perspective and the media perspective and creative. And it's really clear to me that great creative rules, it's got to be your lead. Everything you post should express your brand purpose and align with your overall marketing strategy. And of course, it's got to be well written and beautifully designed. So social is the touch point of your brand. So make it great. Right?
And I will say, well, great creative does rule, so does smarter media. And we'll really drive it home that they really do work hand in hand. So when you're thinking about smarter media for social, boosting organic is an efficient way to strengthen your core customer and core audience base. Testing helps you learn a platform's algorithm and improve your results. Strategic targeting helps you reach all of your audience segments, and feedback loops provide creatives with insights about what's working and not working. I will just say these feedback loops are absolutely crucial. We, are constantly talking. We don't work in silos, just like how the social platforms are. When we're working together, we're working better.
Emily, I'm having a real kumbaya moment now. Cool. It's really true. The more we talk, the smarter we get, and who doesn't want that?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And like I said, we definitely want to be really strategic with our audiences across social. We know that different audiences are on different platforms, but we want to make sure that we're using all of our tools in our toolbox to reach them. So that means the data that's on the platform, partner categories, but also those really sophisticated data types like lookalike audiences, retargeting audiences, and then your owned data. So who's engaging with your content already, who's commenting, sharing, clicking, liking on your social content, who's visited your website, who are your current purchasers, loyalty club members, and device ID audiences as well.
So it's really true that Emily makes me smarter. Our media team really does make our creative smarter. What we learn from all that deeper audience data means that we can start tailoring creative to different audience segments. And then we start doing fresher and more interesting work. That's great.
And I might add one thing, the old school way of just looking at demographic data points, like on the far left, your platform data, that's should be a beginning place. And if you're only in that world, you're probably not using your media dollars as efficiently as you possibly can, and probably aren't getting the results that you definitely can.
For sure. Okay, so our next recommendation: use organic as a testing ground for paid. I like to tell my team, let's start a lot of little fires and then see which ones start to burn. And then when they're burning, that's where you pour on the gasoline.
But I like to kind of reel them in a bit and say, we're not going to pour all the gasoline. It's going to be more of like a slow drip because we do only test with about 10% of a media budget. We're not moving 100%. So slow testing, slow and steady wins the race.
Well said. All right. So we've mentioned before keeping creative fresh, and this is deeper than just A/B testing or even ABC testing, which you definitely want to do. See what works best, and you drip a little more gasoline on it. But also over time, the more you run something, the less effective it gets. So ads need to be rotated and refreshed to maintain and improve your performance. If you run too few ads for too long, you're going to underperform. So the creative you're seeing here is an example from our convenience store client. They were ready to launch a summer promotion this past year where they had a whole bunch of great products on sale for 69 cents each. So as you went through the store, you could find all your favorites for 69 cents. So we came up with a campaign concept that we flashed back to the 60s for the summer of 69 cents, and the work all had a psychedelic vibe. So when we launched the campaign, paid social started off very price heavy and promotional, as you see here. And we could not make that price point any bigger, but we still were able to have fun with it visually and some fun lines, that peace, love, and tacos, things like that. But then over time, to keep things fresh, we took that concept of, flashing back to the summer of 69 cents and reinforcing that message of it's the summer of 69 cents in different ways. So a couple examples here of how we tried to keep that creative fresh and bring that concept to life in different ways. So take a guess, which creative, the top row or the bottom row, do you think performed better? I'll tell you, it was the lower row. The Slurpee Toker, as I like to call him, really did well. The top row with the kind of flashback black and white photos colorized in the psychedelic vibe, it was effective, but comparatively fell kind of flat. So keeping things bright and colorful. The line "No Bad Trips" to Stripe got a lot of love, especially internally with the client. They actually decided to make those shirts. So it was just a fun way, by testing and learning things, we found out what was working, and then we're able to put more money and thought behind those executions. So that takes us through our recommendations for the day. So what are our key takeaways, Emily?
Yeah, so I will say, if there's only 4 things that you remember from this webinar, we want them to be this. Your followers are your core customers, so boost and engage, and you utilize paid social to build on top of that. It's a pay to play world now, so create work that's worth putting money behind.
Yes.
Don't stick with the defaults, experiment and test to improve results and try new platforms. I think Brian and I can both attest this applies to both media and creative. Don't just stick to what you know. And lastly, our big kumbaya moment here, as Brian likes to say, when media and creative work together, your content and results get so much stronger. So when there's an open line of communication and we're working hand in hand to help one another do better, that just makes everyone's lives a whole lot easier.
It's true. We're going to gather around the campfire. I'm going to break out my guitar. Cool. Thank you all so much. Any other questions?
If you have any questions, feel free to just submit through that Q&A box. Oh, let's see. It looks like I missed quite a few questions, so we can just walk through them all. Let's see. We got one question. It's interesting what you say about trying different platforms. Here in the UK, a museum called the Black Country Museum made a splash on TikTok, and then all of a sudden, loads of museums were trying to grab a bit of that pie, and we're flopping somewhat. I think there's a danger of oversaturating the market, so to speak, on those platforms. It means you really scrabble to be noticed by your followers. Let's see.
So I have a gut reaction to that. In creative brainstorming and then internal reviews, a phrase you hear a lot is, "Oh, that's cool, but it's been done." And I always push against that. And there's nothing new under the sun. Everything's been done if you think about it. The question to ask yourself is, how are you doing it differently, or how are you doing it better? If you're just doing the exact same thing a competitor or someone from another vertical is doing, you can't just copy and expect to get the same results. You've got to put your own spin on it, make it ownable, make it unique, make it something that's going to resonate with your brand truth and with your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it totally goes back to that last point, Brian, of what's going to resonate with your audience. Who are you speaking to? Who are you engaging with? And what are they going to really like? I think it's cool that this museum kind of went viral on TikTok, but it also goes back to what you were saying, that viral isn't always attainable, and it usually doesn't happen on purpose.
So if that's the bar you're aiming for, you're not going to hit that. But if you can see, whatever museum that posted that, I'm pretty sure their goal when they launched that TikTok wasn't to go viral. Their launch was to engage their patrons, or reach new members of their community and share the great content that they have within their four walls online. So go back to, what's your goal? What's your strategy? What are you trying to achieve in the market? And then figure out what's the right platform or channel, and how do you experiment to do that in a different way.
Yeah, we also got actually another great question in the same realm as viral posts. Someone asked, should you boost a viral post or leave it alone? My gut reaction is leave it alone. You don't need to put money behind it if people are already putting it in the feed for you. Reserve that budget for something that might need a little extra boost. Do you have any input on that, Brian?
I think it depends. I mean, it's kind of like a what if scenario of what it is and how people are reacting to it. A lot of times when things go viral, people start making it their own. So keeping an eye on that to see if there's something you want to do differently to respond, a subtweet, or, grab a meme that somebody created based on it and do something fun with it. It just depends. But as far as just pouring more gasoline on that fire, probably not the best use of your dollars.
Yeah, agreed. We have another one that I can answer real quickly. Someone asked, is promoting a post on Instagram the same as boosting? And yes, it is.
Oh yeah, I will admit to getting confused by the lingo constantly.
Yes, there's always new lingo, always new tools and terms. So that is a great question. Yes, they are the same. But I will, as a word of caution, Facebook and Instagram sometimes automatically cross promote. So if you are boosting a post on Facebook, it might already automatically be boosted or promoted in Instagram. So keeping an eye on that. We like to track our data separately.
And I might also add to that, Emily, that if you're using a social tool like Sprout or some of the others, sometimes you accidentally can be cross promoting without even realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. This is a good one that, Brian, I think we might each have our own interesting perspectives on, from both a media perspective and a creative perspective. Someone asked, do you have any suggestions for a business that doesn't have repeat customers? The example is a wedding related business.
Oh, yeah. So I mentioned influencers briefly. So that's one route, and that's more tactical than strategic. I think the other thing is really um, think of that social web as your network, and what are the relationships you have in the real world that you could leverage in social. For a business that's really based on relationships and word of mouth and referrals, like wedding planning or catering or any of those kind of things, it really is about who you know. So support your partners, and get the word out and help spread the word about them, and they'll do the same. That's something more tactical and less creative as far as a media spend perspective. But if you did something with one of those partners, like you put a great event together, you got some beautiful photography, post that, tag them in that post, and then you both kind of reap the benefits.
Yeah. And I will say too, I think that's something that you can get really strategic with your audiences with. So if you have a core follower or fan base of people who have used your services in the past, absolutely implement something like a lookalike audience that allows you to target people who have similar interests or similar demographic traits, things like that, to build on top of it is really, really crucial to help get a more qualified impression or high quality impression, as we like to say, so that you're really making the most of those dollars.
Yeah, I would say tactically creative, something else that really works for customer acquisition and referrals. People look to reviews a lot. So you could do a full-blown production and film people saying great things about you as testimonials. You could also find existing reviews online where people had nice things to do, and feature those in post, whether it's a pull quote or reach out to that person, ask them if you could tell their story in a post, and put a little bit of money behind that to get that story out.
Definitely. All right. I have a great creative focus question for you, Brian, and I am intrigued to hear your answer. Someone asked, can it be detrimental to keep changing your tone of voice during a testing period? Followers might expect a certain tone, and then if there's a drastic change in that, could you lose followers or engagement?
Yes. I'll elaborate.
Want to expand on that a little more?
At Ampersand, we are really big on brand truth. What is your purpose? What do you stand for? Let's see if I can come up with a decent metaphor. So, I like wearing button-down Hawaiian shirts and crazy patterns. When we went to the office every day, I show up every day, that's what I'm wearing. I come in one day and I'm wearing a suit. What's up with that? I'm not being me. I'm not being true to who I am. And it's the same for your brand. If I've got a client meeting, I may put on a dress shirt one day, but I'm not going to walk into the office in a three-piece suit. So that probably wasn't a great metaphor, but my point is that you stay true to who you are. And if you want to experiment, especially on different platforms, you can play and have some fun. But you have to be true to who you are. So if something feels off, go with your gut, because at the end of the day, from a creative perspective, everything's subjective. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. That's probably actually a good thing. It is a good thing, because you can't please everybody. You want to please the people that know and love you, and that Emily's point about lookalike audiences. Who are the people that like you? They'll like you even more. Now I'm starting to ramble. Sorry, but the short answer is have fun, experiment, but don't depart so much that it feels like it's not coming from you.
Yeah.
And I might add that when we use the phrase testing, there is some message testing that goes on, but a lot of the times what we're really trying to do is to test the different ways that you can run messages on platforms. For example, on Facebook, there's about 11 or 12 different campaign objectives. Each of those objectives change the algorithm. So in some, you actually get more engagement and clicks. In others, it minimizes the people they put the ads in front who do engage and do click. So a lot of the testing has to do from a media standpoint in order to understand the back end on how to set up the campaigns properly. And I don't want to minimize some message testing, but it's a lot more testing to make sure you're still in sync with how the platforms work.
Yeah. And I think just to drive that home too, a great point that Brian made earlier was, while you can develop and test creative on different platforms for different audience segments, it should always ladder up to that messaging strategy and your brand truths and who you are. So while it may change slightly, it should really be true to your brand's DNA.
And I think the other point I'll make is just from a resourcing perspective, your team is your team and budgets are budgets, but when you have, if you could find a great writer to help you develop that tone of voice and really kind of set those guardrails in your brand guidelines, that helps so much. Because my background's in copywriting, and we'll spend hours debating sentence structure to get a phrase in a post or an ad just right. And then, if money was endless, we could test variations of headlines and see which works better. But the joke tweet that we had at the beginning, where social media managers are responsible for the strategy, content creation, and media placement of all these different platforms and all these different features, you get spread too thin, and then everything gets watered down. So where you can, have specialists doing what they do best, and have those specialists talk to each other.
That is actually a great segue. I know we only have a few more minutes left, so we're just going to answer two more, and then we'll let everyone get on with their day. But I think this one relates to kind of what you were talking about just now, Brian. Someone asked, which category of posts should you focus on if your team is already stretched thin?
I would start with what performed best yesterday. So two answers. One is you look at the analytics and see what's working. And then the other answer, I'm putting on my Emily hat there. My answer would be what is going to bring your brand truth to life in the most interesting and compelling way. So talking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think looking at what worked and seeing how you can rework that in a new and exciting way is a great strategy.
Yeah, I also say a lot, you don't have to do everything at once. So if you have a limited time or a limited budget, try something for a month or a week or whatever it is, set some parameters and see how that goes, and then try something different a month or next year. Again, it goes back to that shiny object syndrome with social changing so fast and so much happening. There's this feeling of FOMO, like I'm missing out, or the grass is always greener. Would we be getting better results if we were over on this other platform instead? So you can't do everything, or you're not going to do anything well.
Definitely. Okay. One last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Someone asked, what sort of data or feedback is helpful to drive the creative process after a campaign?
I can tell you what doesn't. a lot of numbers. A lot of, if you're getting down to percentage points or decimal points on what something did better or why or performance is up, there's a real talent and skill to turning data into insights. What do the numbers mean, and why should I care? And that's really the crucial question. Why should I care? If you can't answer that question, you're not helping me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm off my soapbox because I know we're at the end of time.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the key to it is being able to tell a story with the data and paint a picture with that. So, all right. Well, we are coming up on 1 p.m. So we are going to wrap it up. I know from both of us, we really appreciate you all attending. We're going to be having another webinar coming up in February with Jeff. He's going to be talking about how COVID is changing consumer habits and what it means for your media. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We really appreciate everyone joining us today. And if you all want to give us a follow on social, a little social plug, we'll be posting a recording of the webinar if anyone would like to refer back to it.
And you can tell your boss I said that if you post something on social and tag us with your thoughts, you can take the rest of the day off. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun and hopefully insightful.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.